And now, welcome to part 2 of my daily news and comment podcast. This is Peter B. Collins. It is Friday, January 6, 2016. And this is the day that Donald Trump finally met with top officials from the intelligence community and the director of the FBI. The subject was being briefed on the report that they just gave to President Obama. This is about a 50-page report which purports to prove that Russia intentionally tried to interfere with our elections, that Russia hacked the DNC servers and then fed that information somehow to WikiLeaks, and that was used to manipulate the outcome of our election. As you know, I'm highly skeptical about these claims. I have yet to see any evidence, and as of this hour, it hasn't changed. Now, after that 2-hour meeting, Donald J. Trump issued a statement, and what's a real relief is that it wasn't a tweet. Let me quote. In a statement issued after the president-elect was briefed by senior American intelligence and law enforcement officials, Trump said, quote, "While Russia, China, other countries, outside groups, and people are consistently trying to break through the cyber infrastructure of our governmental institutions, businesses, and organizations, including the Democrat National Committee, there was absolutely no effect on the outcome of the election, including the fact that there was no tampering whatsoever with voting machines." Now, here we have Trump, who loves these superlatives. Absolutely no effect on the outcome of the election. Now, what does he base that on? There's no citation here that I learned a lot from the report. They explained things to me that I didn't know before. Nothing like that. He is simply doubling down on the position that he held in general before this meeting. And despite that, the New York Times headlined this, "After security meeting, Trump admits possibility of Russian hacking." Well, his statement doesn't quite go there. And then this final part we're going to delve into in a moment, including the fact, his statement says, that there was no tampering whatsoever with voting machines. Now, I don't actually believe Russia messed with our voting machines because we have Americans who do that. And again, we'll get into that a little bit further in a couple of minutes. So before the meeting, Trump called the New York Times, spoke to a reporter there by phone, and he said that this is a witch hunt. He said China relatively recently hacked 20 million government names. How come nobody even talks about that? This is a political witch hunt. And so, as you know, I'm pretty uncomfortable being on the same side of this issue as Trump. And I don't hold the same arguments or rationale for being skeptical of the intelligence assertions. Yesterday, Jimmy Clapper said, "Our assessment is even more resolute now about Russian hacking." And all of this is constructed in ways where there is no evidence. It's all inferred. It's all believed. And we all believe the same things here. Well, I don't. And as I mentioned yesterday, whether Trump knows this or not, his stance toward the intelligence community on this issue is confronting the deep state. And we saw senators of both parties almost unanimously praise the intelligence officials yesterday and align themselves with the spooks against Trump. And that's why I find this so interesting and complex. This is not a, kind of one-level set of issues. So in that phone interview this morning, Trump noted there have been prior successful hackings of the White House and Congress, suggesting it's unfair that those attacks on American institutions haven't received the attention that the Russians have. But none of the information from those intrusions was made public as it was in the case of the hacking of the Democratic National Committee and John Podesta, Hillary Clinton's campaign chairman. Trump, with all that being said, I don't want countries to be hacking our country. They've hacked the White House. They've hacked Congress. We're like the hacking capital of the world. And then he shifts to his insecurities, and he has to boast. They've gotten beaten very badly in the election. I won more counties in the election than Ronald Reagan. They are very embarrassed about it. To some extent, it's a witch hunt. They just focus on this. And then he noted that the New York Times and other major media outlets were skunked yesterday by the scrappy little outfit called BuzzFeed. BuzzFeed reported that the FBI had never even examined the servers at the Democratic National Committee. So Trump said the DNC wouldn't let them see the servers. How can you be sure about hacking when you can't even get to the servers? The DNC has previously said, this is the news narrative, the DNC has previously said that the law enforcement agency had not asked to examine the computers. Then Trump got a little pissed. And we'll tell you about that, but first we'll explain why. The Washington Post and NBC last night, based on leaks of the report to Obama that occurred after the briefing of the president at the White House on Thursday. There are two separate leaks here. One to the Washington Post that was picked up by NBC stated that senior officials in the Russian government celebrated Trump's victory over Clinton as a geopolitical win for Moscow. Now, once again, this is based entirely on anonymous official leakers inside the intelligence or political establishment in Washington, and it comes with no attribution and, once again, zero evidence. At least they're consistent about that. And this is based on intercepts of some communications, but we don't know where they came from. And, of course, it's unattributed, and it could be pure fiction, written by screenwriters at the Langley headquarters of the CIA. The Post goes on. Other key pieces of information gathered by U.S. spy agencies include the identification of actors involved in delivering stolen Democratic emails to the WikiLeaks website, and disparities in the levels of effort Russian intelligence entities devoted to Democratic or Republican campaign networks. That's one of the indicators. They're saying, well, gosh, they didn't release any dirt on Republicans. Well, that is speculative at best, and it isn't proof of anything. So then the Post continues, those and other data points are at the heart of an unprecedented intelligence report being circulated in Washington this week that details the evidence, it says, of Russian interference in the presidential campaign. There's no evidence. There is still no evidence. It's all trust me. And I don't trust James Clapper or John Brennan or James Comey to tell us the truth. They can change that by providing evidence. They're going to release an unclassified version of the report, maybe as soon as later today or on Monday. But once again, there's going to be no evidence in it. And so our intelligence community claims high confidence. They've claimed 100% confidence at some points about these sets of assertions. And Obama imposed sanctions on Russia a week before this report was actually presented to him. Doesn't that raise any red flags for you? And buried deep in this Washington Post story, it says, there are no major new bombshell disclosures even in the classified report. So we're being played in a big way. And there's so many people who buy into this without skepticism, without demanding proof, without challenging these cumulative assertions and the buttressing of one media outlet's reports by saying, oh, yeah, they reported what we reported too, so that makes it true. So as a result of this, Trump, who apparently doesn't read the Washington Post or didn't know that the Post first reported this stuff, he tweeted this morning. He said, I'm asking the chairs of the House and Senate committees to investigate top-secret intelligence shared with NBC prior to me seeing it. Again, his ego enters the fray here. And, these are the kinds of leaks that he better get used to, because that's how Washington works. So they claim that they have identified the actors, right? Reuters also has separately published this. Quote, the CIA has identified Russian officials who fed material hacked from the Democratic National Committee and party leaders to WikiLeaks at the direction of Russian President Vladimir Putin through third parties, according to a new U.S. intelligence report. Again, these are assertions. And the idea that they can finger Putin by saying, as Obama did, well, not much happens in Russia without approval from the top dog. That's not proof. That's speculation. That's belief. And it may be accurate. But no one has proved it to me. So, they're saying they have the names, right? Let's take a look at a woman whose name showed up on Obama's sanctions list issued a week ago. Her name is Alisa Shevchenko. And what's interesting is they didn't put her on the list using her own name. They listed companies that she operated that are no longer in business. Now, that raises questions on the accuracy of the information they have, on how current that information is. But Alisa Shevchenko, who is a fairly high-profile young Russian hacker known for working with companies to find vulnerabilities in their systems. She's a specialist on day-one vulnerabilities. When new software is released, she goes through it looking for those vulnerabilities to help her client companies tighten them up. So her companies were listed there, and she's defiant. She decried the insane level of hysteria around the entire, quote, Russian hacking, unquote, story. She suggested that U.S. authorities are guilty either of a technically incompetent misinterpretation of the facts or had been fooled by a counterfeit in order to frame my company. Those who could have had an interest in framing her could include competitors, U.S. intelligence, Russian intelligence, or others, Shevchenko said. A young female hacker and her helpless company seems like a perfect pick for that goal. I don't try to hide. I travel a lot. I'm a friendly, communicative person. And most importantly, I don't have any big money, power, or connections behind me to shrug off the blame. So really, it could be anyone. She formerly worked for Kaspersky Lab, one of the best-known Russian cybersecurity firms. Then she started her own shop. And as I mentioned, both of the companies she started have been shut down, and those are the companies that we listed on the blacklist being subject to American sanctions. Somebody's got some explaining to do. But Ms. Shevchenko said that she's turned down plenty of offers of work on ideological grounds. I never work with douchebags. I only work with honest and open people that I feel good about. Asked directly if she had ever worked on a government contract in any capacity, she said, not that I know of. And yesterday, the scene in the Senate, I got to watch some of it on television last night, was really comical. As you saw, Republicans and Democrats try to outdo each other in kissing the asses of the Director of National Intelligence who lied to those senators point blank, under oath, just a couple of years ago. And now they're embracing him and all of this speculative information as a way of trying to diminish the influence of the incoming president. And so it's amazing to me that they go through all of these maneuvers. And we saw yesterday that Jim Woolsey, the former CIA director who'd been advising the Trump campaign, abruptly stepped down, said, I'm out of here as of right now. We don't know if that's significant or exactly what prompted it. But there is one set of exchanges that I want to credit Roger Schuler for taking a look at. Roger, of course, is the reporter from used to live in Alabama and is exposed at his Legal Schnauzer blog, the corruption in Alabama politics and the judicial system there. And while I don't agree with Roger, who does buy into the Russian hacking claim, nevertheless, he raises an important question. He cites an exchange between John McCain and James Clapper regarding whether Russia actually succeeded in manipulating the vote count anywhere in the United States. And McCain was eager to deny this, even as he was asking Clapper for his opinion. So McCain says, what you're talking about is if they succeeded in changing the results of an election, which none of us believes they were. All right, and then Clapper said they did not change any vote tallies or anything of that sort. And we heard Trump say that there was no change whatsoever. Here's the quote: there was no tampering whatsoever with voting machines. Now, I think this is a fascinating set of denials, because I believe that there was manipulation. And I'm going to do an interview in the next few weeks with Bob Fitrakis, who wrote a report about the attempted recounts in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. There was manipulation of the vote count in Wisconsin and likely in Michigan. And it wasn't done by Russians. It was done by Americans, most likely acting in concert with the Trump campaign. And we know in the primaries, election results were manipulated to favor Hillary Clinton. So we don't need to blame Russia for the obvious failings in our own internal systems. Thanks for joining me for my News and Comment podcast, Part 1 all the way through, or just Part 2. It's always your choice. And this podcast is available daily on YouTube.
Happy trails to you until we meet again. Happy trails to